more than 200 perks in Dead by Daylight for both sides, and much of their strength comes in how you pair them with each other. Now, some of them have very obvious examples of anti-synergy. For example, if you have a perk that works within the terror radius, and then you bring another terror radius removing perk, this doesn't work very well, and it's very obvious, and most people would do well to avoid this, and they typically do. However, there are other perks that look like they might work well together, especially because they share a niche, but they actually don't work that well, or might have an anti-synergy that is not super obvious. If you still want to use them, of course, be my guest, you know best. But in this video, I'm going to go over several examples on both sides, timestamps in the description if you want to see the survivor first, and explain to you why they don't work as well as you might think, and what is a good replacement. So, starting out with Killer, we have Know It and Bloodwarden. A perk to insta-down at the end, and a perk to hook someone and block the gates to catch other people. This seems really, really good in theory, but in practice, it barely works. Once you hit survivors with Know It, there's mostly two things that happen. If they are in a good spot, they will go and look out for the totem, and Bloodwarden is honestly not necessary. They're not going to be waiting at the gates. And if they are in a bad spot, they'll often accept that they have to give you 1 or 2 kills or whatever you're getting, and they'll just get out before you can actually get Bloodwarden value. A much more consistent idea is to use Know It with No Way Out. If you're particularly lucky and you hit someone with Know It, what might happen is that they start to look for the totem and they forget to touch the exit gates and they don't trigger No Way Out for a long time, which will give you a ton of time to confirm kills, get someone out of the game, and then get kills that you otherwise wouldn't get. Next up is the combination of Knockout and Deerstalker, which is something that I don't see very often, but that I do see sometimes on killers that want to slug very heavily. With Knockout, you make the person on the ground invisible to other people, and with Deerstalker, you keep seeing them from a hefty distance so that you can keep an eye on them. Now, believe it or not, even if you are going for a slugging build, I don't recommend these two perks together because they have different missions. With Deerstalker, you actually want to stay close to the person and keep an eye on them. But with Knockout, the ideal situation is to just leave them. Leave them. Instead of staying on top of them, which will give away their location even to people that are not paying attention, is to just leave them and make chaos reign in the survivors' communications or lack of thereof. So it's actually a bit contradictory, and if you want to use Knockout in a much more mean way, I recommend that you go for Third Seal if you want to lean on the chaos. With Third Seal, if you hit a few survivors and then you start to leave others on the ground, they're going to have 2 layers of not seeing their teammates, and they'll be very confused. They'll think that they have to do a totem, and when they do the totem, it will still not be enough to get Knockout disabled. So this is really good if you really want to hurt teams that you think are uncoordinated. And if you want to lean on the whole staying on top of the survivor and making it very difficult for them to be picked up, instead of Deerstalker, Coulrophobia is actually an amazing perk for this. Anyone that's injured cannot come and rescue, and they need to go far away to heal, and the healing from the ground itself takes twice as long because of Coulrophobia. So picking someone up from the ground with you next to them is almost impossible, and a very mean combo. If you haven't considered it. Even on killers with small terror radius, it can still work out really well. Next up, and this is one of the reasons why I made this video, Save the Best for Last and Rancor. Seems like an amazing combo. If you see the obsession, you ignore them, go for other people, make Save the Best for Last very, very strong. And if you have left the obsession for last, now you can use Rancor on that person and they'll be vulnerable at the end. So basically you harass non-obsessions and in the end you can kill the obsession with Rancor. This sounds really, really good, but there are 2 situations that completely destroy this build or these 2 perks. And that is, number 1, if the obsession comes and takes hits. People with Medal of Man, people with several other aggressive perks are often the obsession. And if they come and take hits for other people and you're forced to hook them, Rancor loses a lot of its value and Save the Best for Last completely stops on its tracks. This is a really risky thing to bring. Especially, and this is the second one, if someone that wasn't the obsession becomes the obsession. If you have Save the Best for Last at 3 stacks, and then you hit someone, and you down them, and you hook them, and you tunnel them, and then they hit you with Decisive, you're going to lose Save the Best for Last when you hit them. And now if you've killed them, Rancor is completely pointless. You have Rancor on someone that's maybe already dead or already dead on hook. A much better idea if you want to get value out of Save the Best for Last and information, such as the one you got from Rancor, is the combination of Save and Discordance. This is a classic that works really, really well to this day. With Discordance, you'll find 2 or more survivors in a gen, and one of them, you know, is forced to not be an obsession. So you're going to get more info, and it's less likely for Save the Best for Last to backfire. Next up is the combination of either Trail and Torment and Call of Brine, or Trail and Torment and Overcharge. Now, Trail of Torment is a perk that makes it so that when you kick a gen, you become stealthy, and that gen turns yellow, and you can use that time to go and try to spook people. Believe it or not, even though you want to be kicking gens a lot with this perk, it doesn't work well with other gen kick perks like Call of Brine and Overcharge, because if the gen that you kick reaches 0, this perk stops working. So with Call of Brine, which is not super popular, and Overcharge, if someone touches that gen, I mean, it's gone, obviously. And if they don't touch it, this perk will stop working faster. So you can't even kick gens that are like 5 or 6% and get much value because it will just run out. Unfortunately, it doesn't work if a gen hits 0. A better idea from my experience is to use Oppression. With Oppression, people that are on other gens are going to get distracted and they might not notice the yellow stealth. So between that distraction and your lack of terror radius, you might get them. And Dragon's Grip. Dragon's Grip with Trail Torment is actually pretty fun. It is a bit of a gimmick, but it makes many survivors, you know, willing to go and touch it. And if they don't touch it, well, you have stealth for a long time. And if they do touch it, they're exposed. So that is a nice idea. Obviously, don't run that on Nurse because she can't insta-down with Dragon's Grip, but just an example. Next up is a combination that I see very often, actually. Starstruck with Agitation and Awakened Awareness. And the combination of Starstruck and Agitation is a great idea. You pick up and you have a insta-down effect on your terror radius. And with Agitation, that terror radius gets bigger. And with Awakened Awareness, you can see them. But there's a problem. A normal terror radius is 32 meters. Plus 12, that's 44 meters. And this only works within 20 meters. This is a problem. By the time you make survivors exposed, they're going to run away faster than you, probably, at least a little bit. And you're not going to get within range to see them with Awakened Awareness. So you're going to spook them out and you're not going to see them. It's almost better in this situation to not have Agitation so that Awakened Awareness is more likely to happen. Or better yet, keep Agitation and retire Awakened Awareness in favor of Thrilling Tremors. Thrilling Tremors is amazing. It blocks gens across the entire map. So if you pick up and you see a gen very far away that's not blocked, you can walk towards it, hook anywhere near it, and you know that that gen's being worked, and you know that there was someone there that probably got hit by the combination of Agitation and Starstruck. This is a really good combo on killers like Slinger, but it can also work on a few others. Next up is the combination of Mad Grid with literally anything else that applies on hit. Mad Grid should not be combined, this is a hot take maybe, with Save the Best for Last, with Force Penance, Sloppy Butcher, or Franklin's, or anything like that. Believe it or not, the best thing that Mad Grid can do is catch survivors off guard. If you have a bunch of survivors next to a hook, and you're carrying someone maybe from very far, if they get the right idea that, oh, the killer, he's been carrying for a long time, let's take hits, guys, let's take hits. And then you hit one, and they're like, oh, one more hit. And then you hit another, oh, one more hit for sure, he must be out really, really close. Oh, one more hit. That's what Mad Grid does. It can make teams completely fail to save someone, because every time you hit someone, you pause the person that you're carrying. However, if you've already shown the team that you have Save the Best for Last, they're not going to take hits because it still works while you carry. If you've shown them that you have some powerful on-hit effects, such as Force Penance or Franklin's Demise, if they have items, they're not going to want to take hits. So these perks will make the teams act in such a way that Mad Grid is useless. I much recommend that you run Mad Grid by itself, or along with Agitation to make hitting someone a little bit easier if you're so inclined. Next up is the combination of Superior Anatomy and Bamboozle. Now, let it be said, some killers really need Bamboozle. Bubba, for example, Hillbilly, these players, these characters, they really benefit from Bamboozle. So I'm not going to tell you to take this perk off on them. Keep it, but the combination of Bamboozle and Superior Anatomy, especially on other killers, is not as good as it might seem. Yes, you have 40% faster vault, which stacks with this 15% faster bolt, which is a lot. But the moment a survivor sees that you have bamboozle, they will chronically avoid windows. Anytime you're next to a window, they're not going to dangle in front of it. They know that you're going to try to pre-block it. And when they take a window, if they see you hesitate, they're going to run the hell away, which makes Superior Anatomy a missed opportunity. It makes what Superior Anatomy does pretty much pointless. Instead, let me recommend that you run Superior Anatomy either by itself or with Amaliers. The idea here is that if a survivor vaults a window and they just run away, you see it and you can decide whether you want to follow them or go around. But if you see that the survivor is doing the whole thing where they wait in front of the window or then try to do some mind game, then you can hide your red stain, see them with Amaliers a little bit, and when they go back in front of the window, then you show up all of a sudden, vault at 40% faster, and at that point the hit is almost guaranteed, and you're not scaring them away preemptively as you would when carrying bamboozle with it. Next up is having too many hex traps. Hunter Ground is a perk that activates when they do a totem. It's a trap. Same with Retribution. And similar with Pentimento. You want maybe one, maybe two of these, depending on how many other hexes you have, but never bring 3 of them. If you bring 3 of them, and even if you put on a 4th perk that is really nasty, really nasty, you run a massive risk. For example, in this case, if they don't do any totems, there's a good chance your build won't be enough to stop them. If they do 1 totem, and it's Devour Hope, it might not still be enough. If you have another hex, such as a Ruin, and they completely ignore all of your totems, you don't have a build. You barely have a build. It's much better to use fewer of these trap totems and pair them with something really nasty. This would be really nasty. This would also be very nasty. Let's think about the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, well, almost worst case scenario, they do 1 totem, Undying, they do another totem, Devour, and then you have 2 Pentimentos that you can set up. So even in a worst case scenario, it's still pretty good. Compare that to this, where if they do none of the totems, you don't really get that much effect, and it's just Ruin on its own, which is not going to be that strong. So don't make the mistake of having too many hexes that are traps next to each other, unless you really just want to go for the memes. And yeah, next up is a really sad mistake that I still see a lot of people do, which is to use Distressing for anything. Distressing, in my opinion, is a horribly terrible perk that should only be used on some very niche builds, on say Doctor or some other killers. If you really know what you're doing with Distressing, go for it, but do not use Distressing to make Starstruck better or to make Infectious Fright better. These 2 perks, which work off Terror Radius, have better replacements. The first one we already had a look at. Instead of having a somewhat, like about an 8-meter Terror Radius bigger at all times, which is really bad out of Chase, it's much better to have Agitation, to have a 12-meter Terror Radius bigger, but only while you carry, which is what you're interested with Starstruck. And if you're looking for a perk to complement Infectious Fright, actually you're looking for Monitor and Abuse. Monitor and Abuse gives you the upside of having a big Terror Radius in Chase. It lasts long enough so that when you down, it makes a big Infectious Fright, maybe 40-meter Terror Radius scream. But outside of Chase, it makes your terrors smaller, which means that you don't have the downside of having Distressing. And the extra blood points, let me say, it's just not worth it. So yeah, don't do that. The next one, and this is a really sad one. This is a really sad one because I really like Darkness Revealed. And it seems really natural to pair it with Lethal Pursuer. So at the start of the match, you see everyone, and then later through the match, you can reload out a locker or do something and see people. And you will see them for 9 seconds at the start, and it has a +2, and this +2 also applies to Darkness Reveal, which is pretty nice. This isn't a terrible combo, and I think it can work okay if you run this on Huntress or Trickster or other killers that reload. And might have their own auto reading add-ons on top, so that seems pretty good. Like the Cufflinks or the Venomous the Glowing Concoction, so that's cute. It can still work, but beware of people running off the record and Distortion, or a bunch of them in the team. If you have a team, and this is starting to become more and more common, if you have a team that has 2 or 3 Distortions and 1 or 2 of the records, half of them at any given time are not going to show up on this search. Not to mention that if you go to a large map that has bad locker placements, such as the Sanctum of Wrath, this perk is very useless in much of the map. And this perk is such a big map that it's going to do very little at the start. So you're not really getting value, and you're opening yourself up for a few weaknesses. Instead, I might recommend that if you want to use Darkness Reveal, you go for Corrupt Intervention. With Corrupt Intervention, you have a high likelihood of mobilizing players. By the time you find a locker and open it, you might see some of them running, or you might find them normally, and you might have an easier start and less risk by using Darkness Reveal or Lethal early. I think that's a bit more consistent. And I think with that, we have seen all of the killers. Now it's time for Survivor. Let's start with Dwight. So the first combination on Survivor that is heartbreakingly bad: Smash Head and Power Struggle. Power Struggle is a perk that allows you to automatically drop and stun a killer by yourself when you're being carried. If you struggle a little bit, you can use it with flip-flop or whatever. You can drop a pallet, stun the killer, free yourself. And you might think to yourself, wow, if I stun the killer, then I might as well use Smash It, right? Because I'm going to stun the killer, free myself, and get 4 seconds of exhaustion, of 150 exhaustion speed. That sounds really, really good until you realize that it's not really 4 seconds. When you stun the killer and you free yourself from grasp, you literally waste like 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds touching the ground. You only get 2 seconds from this. It would probably be much better for you if you want to lean on the stun part of it to run parental guidance. And that way, when you stun the killer, you lose scratch marks, you don't make any noise, and you don't leave any blood. And this is a really, really good combo. And if you want to use Power Struggle and get a move on after that, it's probably better to just have Spin Burst. There's a really good chance that while the killer was downing you, recovering, carrying, you probably already have your Spin Burst back. And then you can use it exactly when you start a run and get 100% of it rather than the other one. So highly recommend that instead. Next up is the combination of Deliverance and Renewal. I still get some questions in my chat from time to time. With Deliverance, you can unhook yourself and you make yourself broken. And with Renewal, you become broken, and at the end of it, you heal. Some people think that if you run these two perks, you will be healed after the 60 seconds on Deliverance are up. This is not the case. You have to wait the 60 seconds and then the 20 seconds from Renewal. Better to use them separately. If you want to protect yourself from a potential tunneling, much better to use Deliverance and Off the Record. That way, if the killer decides to tunnel you, you have 80 seconds of never going down in one hit at least. So, Off the Record and Deliverance can work pretty damn well. Next up is Fast Track, which is a really cute perk with Stakeout. This is not a super popular perk, so when you run it, you might think to yourself, well, maybe I want to run something else along with this. And a really nice idea is to put on Stakeout. You get points from Stakeout by being close to territories of the killer outside of chase. This guarantees that you'll hit a great skill check. When you hit a great skill check, you get 1%. Stakeout gives it another 1%, so that's 2. And Fast Track for every hook gives you 3%. So that means that if someone gets hooked and you hit a skill check with these two perks, you'll get 5% of the gen. That sounds pretty good, and it is pretty good. However, this has 2 big risks that I think make it not so worth it in practice. Number 1, if you yourself are the person being chased, you're in mad trouble. These 2 perks literally will do nothing. This perk doesn't charge out. If you're being the one hooked, this does nothing. It also runs into the problem of you being too passive. Sometimes you have to help your team not let them get hooked a billion times. And with Stakeout, you need to be passive and not take hits. And with Fast Track, if you're too passive, and you might get them killed before the game is over, and it might backfire. A better idea is probably just to ditch Stakeout altogether, be confident that you can hit the great skill checks, and if you are, then run Fast Track with a perk such as Lucky Break, or better yet, Distortion. With this perk, you are avoiding the early lethal pursuers, you are avoiding Floods of Rage, you are avoiding Barbecue, you are avoiding things that would make a killer chase you, and directing that attention to your team, so that you can focus on gens and use Fast Track or whatever other perk, and let them handle it. If you have a team that you trust, this combination is probably a little bit safer and less likely to backfire. And it doesn't rely on Terror Radius, which means that if you play against a Wraith or an Onryo or some other stealth killer, you don't have to worry of, oh, there's no terror radius, so I can't get stakeout points. Next up is the combination of Guardian and Borrowed Time. Borrowed Time makes it easier for the survivor that's unhooked to not go down afterwards. And Guardian is a really fun perk that increases, it shows you the order of the killer and increases the time survivor gets a speed boost. This is really, really nice in endgame, because if a survivor is really far away and you unhook them, they are so fast. They are basically faster than the killer for a little while. It's really, really nice. And some people think that bringing both together is fun. I agree, it's fun, but it's not the best. And Guardian, if you want to bring it by itself, actually pairs really well with Will Make It. Think about it this way. This gives you option A and option B, and both of them are pretty good. If the killer is right on top of the survivor that you rescue, they are much faster than usual from Guardian. You see the killer in case you need to make a play, and they should be fine. And if you see the auto of the killer with this, and you can tell that the killer is really far away, then you can make a decision to commit to the Will Make It. So you see the killer far away, you see that they're doing something busy, and you're like, okay, I definitely have 8 seconds. And within those 8 seconds, you get a Will Make It heal, full heal, which is really, really nice. And you don't have to like start healing and worry if something's gonna happen. So that's a nice combo. Next up is Prove Thyself and Friendly Competition. This, in paper, seems really, really nice. With Prove Thyself, you do a gen faster with other survivors. If it's just one survivor, you both save about 6 seconds, which is a pretty big deal in my opinion. And then, when you both finish a gen together, thanks to Friendly Competition, each of you gets a small 5% boost of gen speed. And then if he goes and you go to another gen, you can both split up or stay together and do a gen 5% faster. It seems nice, but the 5% is absolutely horrible. People don't know that you have this perk, it doesn't tell them, so if the survivor leaves a second before the gen pops, it doesn't trigger. And even if you get the value, 5% over 75 seconds, it's not even the full gen, not even considering the time it takes you to get to the next gen, it's gonna save you a couple seconds at best. It's not worth it. The synergy between these perks is there, but the second perk, Friendly Competition, is just way too bad to combine it with anything. I recommend you don't use this unless it gets buffed. Instead, consider Deja Vu. With Deja Vu, you have 2 scenarios, both of which are good. If your teammates work on gens with you, great, you break up the 3 gen. If your teammates hopefully run the killer, great, you're by yourself, which sucks, but not as much as this. If you're by yourself and you have this, you're wasting 2 perks. If you're solo and your teammates are busy, this is 2 perks wasted. Here, if you're solo, you do waste Prove Thyself a bit, but you get a buff from Deja Vu, which is going to be bigger in the next patch, by the way, and you break the closest gens to each other, which means the killer will have a harder time defending the subsequent gen spreads that remain after that. So Deja Vu is good in every situation, whereas this is very likely to backfire. Next up is Blood Pact and For the People. This seems like a really cool idea. We use For the People on someone, you heal them, and then you both get a speed boost. But it has a problem that if you become the obsession, for some reason this perk stops working. So Blood Pact and For the People can only be used if both people have Blood Pact. If the person that you heal then has Blood Pact, then it can work. But unless you're gonna go for that, this is not a good combo. You will pick up, yeah, but you won't get the speed boost from Blood Pact because it will automatically disable. You can use Buckle Up instead for a similar effect. When you have Buckle Up and you pick someone from the ground, you give them a 10% speed boost, which is pretty significant and helps to get out of the action. But if you want an even better super hidden gem combination for the people, consider Renewal. Now, this is a bit tricky, okay? When you heal a survivor, if you immediately use For the People, it doesn't count as a full heal, so Renewal doesn't do anything. But if you heal a survivor and see the bar go up a little bit, and then after like half a second you press the button for the people, you will heal them, you will become injured, but you will fully activate Renewal. Which means that if you go down at that point and you get hooked, you will come out of the hook and heal yourself automatically. So it's literally a Houdini rabbit in a hat type of trick to get a free health state. You heal them, and you get your health back eventually. So it's free health state, essentially. Which is a really, really nice thing that not a lot of people use, and maybe not a lot of people know. I certainly didn't know until someone pointed it out to me, and it's something that you can try in your next game. Anyway, those are some perk combos to avoid. But if you know others, please let me know in the comments, because I squeezed my brain and that's as far as I could tell. And if you like one of these combos or have any comment as well, please let it know so that me and others can learn from it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.